The first Omega in Space is back once again, The Simpsons and Swatch celebrate Halloween, Frank Muller gets a little bit creative, plus tons of industry news from Hodinkee, Formula 1, and tons more cool things on the show today. Welcome to the Scottish Watches podcast, probably one of the last episodes to be recorded before we head across to different places. Hong Kong for a number of different reasons, we've talked about it before. Horology Forum is on the move and we are on the move following suit. But before we get to that in our transatlantic international travels, Dave, should we talk about some cool watches?
We should definitely talk about some cool watches because there's been not a huge number of releases this past week or so, but some quite notable ones. We'll go with notable, especially from Omega, which is I think where we're going to start.
Well, it is your favourite brand, perhaps. Although you do work for a brand, so we've got to be careful with those kind of things. That joke is going to get old really quick, isn't it, Dave? But yeah, Omega are at it again. The first Omega in space. I don't know if there's any other brand that does any other thing that could possibly be so self-indulgent as to say the first something in something. The first Rolex in the sea doesn't really have the same ring to it, does it?
No, although the whole kind of debate about the world's first dive watch and all these kind of nonsensical things do get a bit convoluted at times. But yes, Omega definitely do push the first watch in space and have done actually since 1969, I believe. In fact, even earlier.
Watch in space, or is it first Omega in space, just so they're careful?
Well, I think they're careful with their language, let's be honest. And yeah, as with marketing for a few of the brands out there, you know, stories maybe get slightly embellished at certain points in times, you know, to the point where people like Periscope love to jump in and maybe correct a few wrongs.
Ah, Periscope. There's a name I've not heard in a long time. Yeah, we should probably drag him on the show. He's been a busy boy out there, disproving many myths. He is the horological mythbuster along with Jamie and Adam Savage. Yeah, okay. We will get him back sooner rather than later. But anyway, enough of that hullabaloo. Tell us about your second favourite watch brand and what they're up to.
Well, let's go with my favourite watch brand that produce watches that have been to the moon. Because that's technically true, isn't it? We'll go with that. So yes.
It is.
Indeed, what are we talking about? We are talking about the Omega first Omega in space, or the FOIS as it gets more commonly called by us nerdy collector type people. A watch that has been in the range only actually since 2012, not quite as long as people seem to think it has been. But that FOIS model was introduced at the 50th anniversary of the notable moment when Wally Schirra wore his own personal Omega on a mission which went round the Earth 6 times, I believe. But it was his own personal watch and they want to celebrate that because why wouldn't you? Although the original FOIS was discontinued 3 years ago, they have now reintroduced an all-new version, an improved version, to celebrate what next year will be the 60th anniversary of this momentous moment where his personal watch was taken into space. Have they improved it? In my opinion, yes, they have. Although there is definitely one of the points of design that's a little bit contentious. Some people definitely love it. Some folk a lot less so. We'll get to that in a minute to see what your thoughts are. Of course, remember, check out the show notes because that's where you will see the pictures. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, you will be seeing the watch flashing in front of your eyes as you hear our dulcet tones.
I love the way every week Dave says the very, I don't know, irrelevant, unnecessary comment of, if your watch isn't YouTube, your watch isn't YouTube.
Well, some people like to be pointed out what they are.
That's it. Dave is under the weather today. He's got some maybe Colombian flu. I'm not really too sure. There's a little bit of sniffing going on. Yeah, one question for you, because we're already playing around with the terminology they're using here, the first Omega in space. How many times does a brand bring a watch out and then just remove it from circulation for a couple of years and then bring it back with a lot of hullabaloo? Is that another Omega thing?
Well, it was a bit unusual that they did decide to delete it, and they didn't make really a big song and dance about it, but it was one of the more popular models within the range. You know, people did like this because, of course, compared to the Speedmaster Professional, this watch is smaller, in fact 39.7 millimeters, this new edition being the same. But like
the Speedy Reduced of the past?
Yeah, kind of Speedy Reduced, but more aesthetically similar to the Professional Speedmaster. Obviously, you've also got the case that doesn't have the kind of pusher protectors on it as well, so it's a little bit more symmetrical, although it does have 3 or 2 buttons and a crown on one side, which does remove the symmetrical nature of the case, but we know what we're talking about here. The new version is slightly thinner as well, 13.2 4mm, so fractionally thinner than it was previously as well, 48 lug to lug. Does make it very wearable for a lot of people. Lots of little kind of nods to history here. You've got the aluminium bezel, so they've not used ceramic in the bezel material. You've got that dot over 90, which of course you would expect to see on these kind of vintage reissues. You've got the alpha hands, something that a lot of people really like from that original, and a few other improvements. They've got that new flat link bracelet that was first seen a couple of years ago on the 50th anniversary. Definitely a big improvement over the bracelet they had been using previous to that. I think it's a really well-wearing bracelet, comfortable, slightly thinner, quite flexible, so it does kind of mold to the wrist better than, in my opinion, the previous generation of bracelet. You've got the step dial making an appearance again, rather than the flat dial from the previous kind of FOIS watch. And you've got this colour that in pictures definitely looks black. For sure it looks black, but it's a bluey grey colour. I've been lucky enough to see one IRL, and it's definitely got a little tint to it, but you do need to plane the light. In a lot of lights it will definitely come out as black. And of course you've got that Metas certified caliber, the 8361 caliber is in there as well, so you've got that completely bang up to date Metas certified caliber in there. So lots of newness and lots of nods to the original watch that the previous iteration of this watch didn't have. And a lot of folk like to maybe complain a little bit about it not having those features. So I think all in all, they've done a great job, except maybe the lume. That's the bit that's going to cause a little bit of love it, hate it, I think. I personally don't mind it. What camp are you in, Ricky?
I quite like it. I think it's quite tasty. I saw a lot of comments on Instagram of people going back and forward if they liked it, if they like faux patina on the lume plots. And to me, it looks good. I've not gone too in-depth on it. You'll find out later on when we talk about what we've been up to. The fact I have been up to practically nothing to do with watches apart from dealing with the show and doing the bare minimum this week possible because other things are taking priority. But it's a good looking watch. It's obviously caused a little bit of consternation between different collector groups, but that always is the case. And if you're not ruffling feathers and getting tongues wagging, you're not doing a great job promoting yourselves. Yeah, I think it's good. It reminds me, and I might be completely wrong, of the 321 edition that came out a few years ago. It looks quite similar to that.
Yep, I actually kind of described it as a more affordable, more accessible version of that Ed White 321 reissue that was brought out a few years ago, which of course many people, including myself, see as, I guess, the ultimate modern iteration of the Speedmaster watch. It kind of ticks pretty much all the boxes that people are looking for.
And that one's a Halo product that's almost I remember someone, it may have even been yourself, saying that the movement in that is created by one watchmaker start to finish.
Yep, absolutely. That watch is one that is created or put together or built, however you want to describe it. I think the brand will use created because they love that word, by their specialist department, the same department that's responsible for their center tourbillons and their kind of chrono chime and their real premium pieces. So the 321s are made in that department. Of course, it comes with the downside that it is pretty expensive, verging on at least double the price of any of the other more commonly available Speedmaster models. And of course, it's quite difficult to get your hands on. They're made in limited numbers and they are a little selective about who they do offer them to. I said, though, that this watch is part of the core collection and therefore is a really good, I'll use the word alternative, or more accessible version of that watch. It comes in actually fractionally less expensive than the standard professional Speedmaster Moonwatch. I think £7,100 on the leather option or £7,400 on the flat link bracelet. So while £7,000 odd is still a lot of money for a watch, the fact that it's a little bit less than the very commonly available standard Speedmaster is a good thing. It looks great, it's a nice size, it's a little bit different, it's got a nod to history, heritage. I think this is a pretty solid effort from them to bring it in as well at a price where I would have expected them to be charging £500, £1,000 more than the Common Garden variant. So yeah, fair play to them from that, and I think it's a good looking watch. As long as you can live with that lume, which personally I could, I don't think you've got much to lose on this one.
And fair play to Ben Clymer & Co, because it turns out, as you may have heard on the show that came out just before this one with Barbara Plumbo, because she got the scoop ahead of Dave, that was a recording we did ahead of time, Hodinkee has been saved from the fire pits of hell by Brian Duffy and the Watch of Switzerland group. Good of a Scottish guy to step in and save the day, eh Dave? But Hodinkee, yes, they seem to have their secured future in place. They were dangling by a thread. Things have not been great. Their masthead has been diminishing week by week. Contributors and editorial staff disappearing in droves. And behind the scenes, people that have left the organisation during rounds of layoffs have been wagging their tongues in a very negative way. But Ben put out a blog post, as he did back in July, where he said, we're righting the ship, we're going back to our roots. Well, going back to roots, turns out they're getting bought by a retail outfit. But Dave, you've probably had a little bit of time to digest this one because the news has been out for a few days now as we record. What are your thoughts on this? Is it good? Is it bad? Where do you see things going?
To be honest, I think from the side of Hodinkee and also the side of Watch This Switzerland, it's a good thing for both of them. For the normal person, the you, the me, all the people listening to this that use Hodinkee as a source of information, of reading, of kind of enjoyment of content, I think it will probably be a good thing. I think it's fair to say that Hodinkee's moved in a way that hasn't really been in alignment with what most of their historical readership would have wanted. Moved more towards retail. Everything became a little bit contrived. They lost a lot of their great writers. Their kind of soul seemed to disappear a little bit. This, as Ben had commented over time, allows them to maybe pull back into what they were really good at. Great content, great reading, great articles. And of course, why is it good for Watch This Switzerland? Well, I think it's fair to say they are one of the largest watch retailers, not just in the UK or Europe, but in fact in the world. Big base now in the US, a huge base in the UK, and of course they have a few European markets as well. And of course, an online business that is fairly significant. I think where they are weak is their social media, their messaging. They've tried podcasts, they've tried various kind of outreach things, and I don't think any of it's really stuck in the way they would like it to. So what this does is it allows them to really tap into a rich vein of quality content, because even the arguably worst content that Hodinkee have ever produced is probably significantly better than most retailers have ever produced themselves, bar one or two who are the exceptions to the rule. So I think Watch This Switzerland get a great outlet, a great social media interaction, a great kind of platform to talk about watches in general. Hodinkee get the ability to be more what Hodinkee want to be without being beholden to retailing brands as well. So I think for both of them, it'll be great. Time will only obviously tell. Who knows how much influence will be exerted over them in terms of what they write, what they don't write, who they write about, who they don't write about. That's what's going to be telling over time. Who knows? But the background of the deal is all the other investors are out. And of course, everyone knew that LVMH had a bit of a stake in there, that being the kind of LVMH investment arm. They're completely out. It's a wholly owned business now by Watch This Switzerland Group. So I hope it does mean a return to more like what we used to get from Hodinkee. And hopefully it means that we get some kind of real good backing from Watch This Switzerland to allow them to do that.
In an ideal world, yes, I would love that to be the case. Will it happen? I don't know. There have been various buybacks in the past with different places, not even within watch media circles. I remember when Twitter sold and then the guys, I think it's Jack Dorsey and co, got back in tow with things and it never really worked out the way they wanted it. Different kettle of fish, obviously, this way around with Ben Clymer and co. And I think he is probably the right person, the right figurehead to be there to drive things back the way it was. But also you got to remember, since they turned 10, the whole media landscape completely changed. The pandemic years, and this is quite pertinent in my brain just now because I have recorded a show with the guy that runs Watch Pro, Rob Corder. He's not been on here for so long that I actually had to go through the back catalogue to find out how many years in the past it was since he last graced our airwaves. But he likes to take a very technical business analyst slant on things. So he'll be here on Monday and that show's recorded, currently getting edited up. He's got his business hat on, talking about all things Hodinkee and the takeover. Personally, I think it's a good thing. I didn't want to see them lose their jobs. I didn't want to see it just end up dead, like various different tech blogs. Anon Tech, a vintage tech blog from many years ago, died this year because the publisher just decided to turn off life support. And we didn't really want to see that with Hodinkee because they've got great heritage, they've done a lot of good things, and they were there at the right time. But moving on, Dave, it's the right time to tell you if you want to get involved in what we do here, you want to send us an email, have your thoughts and queries and suggestions read out on the show. That email address is info@scottishwatches.co.uk. Don't DM us. You can leave comments on YouTube video. People have been doing that. We actually get quite a lot of fire in the comment section in the last edition we put up. One person was not happy because we uploaded the video at 6:30 AM on a Sunday, and what time is that? Well, I didn't realise it was broadcast live and you could only tune in at that point in time to watch it. You know, you could maybe click that bell notification thing and find, never mind, you know, there are technologies out there. And then another person was not happy with Gav's memes. I mean, can you believe it? They're here for the banter for me and Dave. I appreciate you for saying that. But some of Gav's memes are really good. The Teddy Ruxpin ones when they make an appearance, always one to look out for. And the Diddy memes were really good. We do have an email in, Dave, and you can read it.
Well, thank you. Hi, Dave and Ricky. Just a fun tidbit from Switzerland. Watch manufacturer Jean Singer requires employees to clock out for toilet breaks. Court just confirmed that this is legal. See thread below. Got to say, there's a lot of comedic material there, but perhaps also speaks to the working conditions in the watch industry. Just a thought. Much love from a Swiss living in Norway, listening to the pod during the long nights of my maternity leave. Ellie. Well, clocking out for the toilet, Ricky. You do it regularly. I've not seen you clock out yet.
You know, there was always a thing that I heard was shit on company time, but apparently in Switzerland you're not.
No, indeed. Yes. I think there's a huge variation in different brands, it has to be said. Some brands are very relaxed, laid back. Some are a little more uptight. Switzerland's one of those nations that definitely likes a rule or two, and some of them definitely are quite specific and militant about following those rules. Others are a little bit more laid back, shall I say.
Say, for instance, Dave, you, hypothetically speaking,
yes,
worked for a Swiss watch brand.
Yeah.
Are you allowed to poo?
If I was to hypothetically work for a Swiss watch brand, point to note, I do work for a Swiss watch brand, I'm allowed to defecate on company time.
Good to know. Good to know what your bowel movements are covered by Andy and Sue. But we shall move on from there. And yeah, if you do want to get in touch, drop us a line there. One of the other things that was mentioned in the YouTube comments was my shit memory meant that I could not remember certain brands that had actually produced watches with Côte de Geneva striping on the dial, and there was a number of them listed. So in the show notes, because you will play along, even if you're watching us on YouTube, click the link in the description, it'll take you across to our website and you can see all the stuff in there. There were a number of them. So yeah, I forgot. I remember a couple of them, other ones I had no clue about. So once again, thank you.
Well, we need to move on and talk about another watch, this time from Frank Muller. Wonder if his atelier lets you go to the toilet on company time. But anyway, he has been producing a watch that celebrates an anniversary, I think the 80th anniversary, that being the platinum anniversary of Sincere Watches.
Well, I've heard that if you go to the toilet at Frank Muller, they definitely don't put WD-40 across the top of the cistern.
And why would they want to put WD-40, Ricky, across the top of a system?
Who knows?
Hang on, I need to itch my nose. So yes, Frank Muller, a brand that actually doesn't necessarily get a lot of time in the media circles, but has been around for a long time. Sincere Watches are a significant retailer within the Asian market, and they have been a retailer, I believe, for over 30 years consistently of Frank Muller. They've been celebrating their 80th anniversary, their platinum anniversary this year with quite a few brands. In fact, we've talked about many of them over the last few months that have done celebration anniversary pieces with them. This one is the Frank Muller Vanguard Damascus Steel for the platinum anniversary. Kind of confused me at first because they've not used platinum, they've used Damascus steel. But that's a cool thing because Damascus steel is a material that is not used that often in watches. I've seen a little bit of Damascus steel from likes of Zinn, the German brand. I think our friend James Thompson, Black Badger, has used Damascus before because of course he is the master of using unusual materials. And there's a couple of other brands that escape my memory. This is where someone will write a comment in YouTube to tell us the ones that we've forgotten. But yes, Damascus steel is uncommonly used, but it does get used occasionally. And when it does get used, it's great. What is Damascus steel? Basically, it is two types of steel that you layer together and it gets folded and it comes up with a great looking pattern. Apparently originally used from Damascus in Syria. It's been used for sword blades, knife blades, these kind of things, quite common. We've mentioned this before, used in the kind of craft pocket knife industry for these fancy looking blades and cases. Really great looking material. It has to be acid etched in a bath for a given period of time to bring the best textures out. A little bit like you have to do with meteorite that gets used in dials. But he has used this in many places, not just the case. He's actually taken a bit of a risk here, I would say, and he's using it for the bridges of the movement as well. Now, that will not have been an easy thing to do because bridges do rely on exact flatness, and when you have to start using things like acid etching and treatments, that can be a challenging engineering task to overcome. So fair play, they've not just used it in the case. This watch is interesting to look at because they have also mixed in various elements in gold as well. Definitely not my thing visually, absolutely not, but I have to applaud them from a point of view of using unusual different materials. It is a limited edition, of course. I think only 25 or 28 pieces. I will check my notes and get back to you with the correct number. And not an insignificant price point either. This one coming in at around about the 42,000 UK pounds. Obviously predominantly been sold in the Singaporese market because that is the home of Sincere watches. Ricky, this is probably more up your street. You like this tonneau barrel type case shape, not my vibe. What do you say on this one?
I think you already know the answer to that because I included it in the show run. So yeah, this is one I really like. And I took the piss out of Frank Muller, not just with the toilet joke earlier, but previous to that, because they use a Comic Sans style font sometimes on the dial that just doesn't gel with me. This is really nice. I love it. I love the angles on the bridge work. It has got a look that goes into Hublot territory, but the good Hublot territory. It's got things in there a little bit Girard-Perregaux, the way they've got their bridge arrangement, but the Damascus steel with what looks like rose gold. It's got Richard Mille. It's got all kinds of things mixed together, and yeah, 41k UK, and we converted it across from Singapore dollars, so you don't have to, as you're listening to us. I really do like it. It stands proud. It doesn't really look like a Richard Mille. It doesn't look like other ones that have come out before. The Damascus steel, even on the bridges, it's got a very organic reptilian look about it. Snake skin, perhaps, at certain different angles, and the rose gold colour, it matches up well. Plus, it is completely see-through. You've got the clear front, the clear back. Everything has been skeletonized away. Not even skeletonized, designed in such a way. And the angles they use for the bridges, they all work and look really good. It's almost like an X-Men watch. It's got the X-Men logo in it from one of the previous DVD covers. Yeah, one I like. I'm glad I included this one. But what are we going to talk about next?
Well, maybe we should talk about the one time in recent history that brand with a big crown and has maybe got a colour green within its portfolio hasn't actually won.
Well, there's a funny story. We were at the Formula 1 this year, first time, and we were sitting with a future guest at that point, previous guest at the moment to the show, and that's David Chokran, and he's sitting there typing away and then turns round to us both and said something along the lines of, yeah, Rolex ain't going to be sponsoring this anymore. And then got back into what he was doing. And me and Dave were like, what the fuck is this guy talking about? Who does this guy think he is? Giving us scoops behind the scenes. And then it turned out over that weekend, there was a lot of behind the scenes whispering going on. And then some news trickled out. And then some more news trickled out. And here we are in the middle of October, and it has finally come to pass. So it turns out we get the best guest in the world in this show.
So the rumours, of course, were that Rolex was out and LVMH was coming in. Nobody quite knew what that looked like. They didn't even know if it was actually definitely true because both companies were keeping rather quiet and stum about it. But it's now all out in the open after a few months. And yes, LVMH are in. They are the headline global sponsor for Formula 1, I believe for 10 years. So a fairly significant deal. Now, this starts from 2025 and it's not just dedicated to one of the brands within the LVMH stable. It will cover many of them. You've got Louis Vuitton, definitely confirmed, and of course Tag Heuer, who already have other relationships within Formula 1, which we'll get to in a minute. Rolex have been the official timekeeper of Formula 1 since 2013, so they've had a fairly decent leggy stretch at being the timing partner for Formula 1. But I believe what has happened is, as Formula 1 has grown in popularity, it's got more airtime, both on television, it's become more global. Obviously, the US and other markets are getting much more into Formula 1 than maybe they were 10, 15 years ago. The value of Formula 1 has significantly increased. Did Rolex want to pay the extra money? Who'll know? Nobody will ever know that for sure, but it appears that for sure LVMH has come in and they've outbid them. Whether they've outbid them or just bid high enough to keep Rolex out of the bidding, who knows? But LVMH it's all about. They have obviously been involved in Formula One. Tag Heuer being involved. Obviously, they have a Formula One watch. They've got a team that they're involved with as well. In fact, many watch brands out with LVMH are still involved. Who have we got? We've got Tudor. So Rolex is still involved in a little bit. They are partnered with the RB Visa Cash App team. You've got Tag Heuer, obviously with Red Bull Racing. You've got Richard Mille with Ferrari and McLaren. IWC, of course, with AMS Petrona Mercedes. You've got Girard Perregaux with Aston Martin. Of course, we have got Moser, who could forget? We have Moser with Alpine. We, of course, were their guests this year at the Formula One in the UK. And Williams was, up until 2023, obviously partnered with Bremont. So lots of different brands from different backgrounds are involved in Formula One and will stay involved. This is not an overriding deal, but for Formula One headline, they are the main watch brand partner. So interesting times. Let's see what happens over time. Let's see what brands they use, whether they stick with one, whether they spread the love over all of the different brands. But yep, it appears that Formula One is now in the big leagues when it comes to money and sponsorship.
Well, you can't really diminish Rolex and say that they weren't already big leagues themselves, because they are everywhere. I don't think LVMH are going to have quite the presence, because all Rolex did was they slapped their logo on everything. Anytime a camera on television panned past, Rolex. Video games in the background, Rolex. I don't think they can quite meet and beat that, because they're going to dilute it across different brands. But you've still got Wimbledon. You've still got Daytona. You've still got different golfing events across the world. So I don't think they're worried that much. And they seem to still be selling quite well. But a watch that could be selling quite well is my wrist check. And this is one that we've had in for a while. We actually picked this up in Geneva when we were across at Geneva Watch Days, and we were sworn to secrecy. We weren't allowed to talk about it until embargo was lifted. And they never told us when the embargo was going to be. So I have been keeping an eye on their Instagram, their website, and various other places. And now it has broken cover. It is out and about. And this is a watch that might tie in quite nicely with Formula One, although it's based upon lots of different avenues of automotive works from the past. The brand is called the Pancel. It's not a revitalised name from a bygone era. It is actually a concatenation of the first few letters of 3 existing and now defunct car brands. And we got to sit down with these guys a couple of times earlier this year at Watches and Wonders, then again just a month ago, and they told us a little bit about their history, the fact that they're bringing economically priced, budget-friendly, pocket-friendly watches to a mass market audience at very low cost, but with really high design skills. And Dave, you've had a look at this one. I've got it on wrist. I'm going to let you talk about it first before I wrist check it properly.
Actually, no, Ricky. You make me read emails out. You're wearing the watch. You have the watch. So why should I talk about something that you have on your wrist? You can tell them all about it. Over to you.
Well, I have a dog and bark yourself, Dave, but I suppose I'll have to do that myself. It has been out and about. I thought this was going to be a complete pain in the arse to resize, because the bracelet it comes on is very 70s and it is not multi-link. It is single cut. And I thought, this is going to be an absolute nightmare, but it is absolutely fantastic. There is no wiggle on the bracelet itself. If I take this off the wrist just now, and if you're watching on YouTube, you will be getting the full AV experience. But there is, look at that. Listen to that. There is no wiggle at all. It doesn't droop. It doesn't hang, a bit like our Dave there. And it has got everything about it that you would expect from a vintage re-edition that never came out in the first place. So a bit like various brands we've spoken about recently, they're taking a lot of design cues and ethos from the past, putting it together with modern manufacturing techniques and keeping that price point super low. Looking at it, dial side, it has got an oyster quartz kind of look, a VC222, maybe one of the classic Defy models from Zenith, but it's mecha quartz inside. Again, keeping the price down, and it's one of those fire and forget numbers that you put it on the wrist, you don't have to set it, you don't have to mess around with anything, you leave and you're out the door. It has got lots of little touches and cues on it you would expect from something a little bit more expensive. Even though it's economical, it has got a sapphire frontage. It has got really nice polished outer rings on the subdials, multicolour, multifacets round there. The tacky on it is in a very cool 70s automotive font. And even on the crown, which is more of a hex arrangement instead of circular, it has got a tiny little bit of anodised aluminium there in an off orange, off red colour. The little pushers are very reminiscent of pistons, And the bracelet has got a butterfly catch at the back that's super easy to resize, rejig, and removing the links is an absolute piece of piss. Running through the spec for everybody that wants to hear about that kind of stuff. This Allure chronograph comes in at 36mm, thickness of just over, or just under 11mm, I suppose you could say, lug to lug of just under 43mm. 316L stainless steel with 50 meters of water resistance, and because it's got those pushers, that is Speedmaster territory. You've got a 5-year warranty, and inside it has got a Seiko's Industry VK63 Mecha Quartz. Packaging looks great, the watch looks even better. You can get this now, link will be in the show notes, straight to their website. If you like it, grab it, because these ones will fly out the door. Really happy with it, and the price point in that here in the UK is £495, all taxes included. So now you've had a look at this and you have refreshed your grey matter, what are your thoughts?
Again, another watch that is a prime example of that you don't need to spend a lot of money to get a great looking watch. Something that's slightly unique, not really copying or mirroring anything that's out there. You've got an interesting bracelet that's got that semi-integrated look in there. Another watch that falls significantly under that 4-figure number, which, you know, in this day and age of everything being a little bit more expensive, people are being a little bit more frugal. But you can still maintain that watch addiction, hobby, stroke, compulsion to get a new watch on your wrist and not necessarily have to spend a huge amount of money.
Assembled in France, it has got lots of cool little facets and cutaways to the case, the side. Yeah, it is really nice, and it is part of the same group that has revitalised the Amida brand, so they know what they're doing when it comes to design, technology, production, and bringing really funky watches to the wrists of many across the planet. So there we go, the new Depancel Allure chronograph. What you got on the wrist today? Ooh.
There we go, there's an ooh from Ricky. Ricky actually has a watch that is the original, or the father, I am your father, of this watch. This, of course, being the re-edition of the Accutron Spaceview. This, the Spaceview 2020. It took them a long time, 10 years by all accounts, to actually work on the movement that's in this. It is a special all new electrostatic movement. So doing what Accutron back in the day did the best, inventing new things. Obviously they had the tuning for kind of electronic movement, which was the one that gave Quartz a bit of a run for its money, but unfortunately ultimately lost out in the end. They spent 10 years developing this new movement, which was the re-edition of Accutron as a brand in its own right, not sitting under Belova anymore. Now just the headline on the watch is Accutron. It's the brand, it's the model as well. I have pimped mine up. The original strap wasn't maybe the most comfortable strap for me, and I did commission this green alligator strap with a red rubber lining on it.
Bit like your mattress cover. Not my favourite Accutron. No, not at all. I did want to love that one when it first came out. There was a prototype that came out and then they were really quiet for a number of years. They were probably trying to perfect it. And I got to see one in real life and it just didn't compare to the original. Obviously it's a lot bigger. It doesn't have that hum. It uses a completely different mechanism, the electrostatic system you were talking about there. And they work in tandem. The watch can go to sleep to reserve energy. And it's got the coil above that is a little bit reminiscent of the coils that you get on the original tuning fork movements, but it's just not the same. You know, it's when they bring a car out like a new Mustang, it's nothing like the original. It's a little bit like that. Cool watch on its own, but I do prefer my OG. And we do have another email in, but I'm not going to get Dave to read it out. And I'm not really going to read this one out myself either. All I'm going to say is that Evan, who I bumped into, a listener to the show, he was at a recent comedy gig. I walked in, he was there, he said hello, we exchanged pleasantries, off we went, talked about it in the show. Turns out he heard my shout out, and he shouted out my shout out, so I'm shouting out his shout out, my shout out. So there we go.
Yes, indeed. He appears to be rather happy with the fact that he got a shout out, and he is going to be even happier that he got a shout out about his shout out. So anyway, moving along. Ricky, you say you've not been up to much, but you've actually been up to a lot. Just not anything really that interesting or exciting, I think is how we would describe it.
Yeah, it's adult stuff. I do tend to keep away from doing that as much as possible. And I had a chat with my sister today about doing the least amount of work for the maximum amount of return, which I think is a human trait. We all want to get as much as possible for the least amount of outlay. And unfortunately, the last couple of months, as things have been moving forward, I have been getting my house in order because it will be up for sale shortly. Me and my good lady have been looking at places. We're currently speaking to a few places about some new property, new builds, second-hand builds. There's one we've kind of honed in on, and I will be reporting my progress of getting my foot further up the property ladder, because I have outgrown where I stay just now, and I do need a dungeon that is kitted out with laser sentries, armed response units, guard dogs, and all the rest of it for my Swatch collection, because obviously I don't keep anything good here. It all lives in a safety deposit box, and that is miles away. But yeah, I've been doing all the house movie stuff, looking at things, getting quotes for this, that, and the other. Flooring. Who knew you actually had to buy new flooring when you buy a new house? Weird, eh? But yeah, I've been doing all that kind of stuff. Nothing really to do with watches. I've been palate cleansing myself, apart from recording the shows, because obviously going across to Hong Kong, seeing Shruti and the team, Hind, Barbara, etc., for Horology Forum. That is going to be a good end to the year before things kick off again at the start of next year. But that is about it. Dave, you're going to have to run with this one and tell everybody what you've been up to.
Well, I've actually been up to more than nothing for a change, because I've been at home for the best part of a week. I've had to kind of channel my inner Nicholas from Fears. As we know, when Nicholas travels a lot, he loves to point out in social media his specialist packing regime for when he's away for 2 or 3 weeks. And I've had to kind of take some advice from that, because I have been trying to pack for my upcoming trip, which is just over 2 weeks. So that is going to be tiresome, I feel, but it will be good fun getting out to see people. Yeah, but I'm going to be tired at the end of it. Outside of that though, iPhone 16 Pro, disaster. Apple seem to have dropped the ball heavily on software over the last few weeks and months. First of all, the iPad came out, the new iOS 18 came out, and it didn't work on their latest and greatest iPad, which I happen to own, which was a bit of a letdown, it has to be said. Then I got my iPhone 16 Pro. I thought, great, opened it up, set it all up, and certain key functions just didn't work properly. A lot of Googling later, I finds out, database corruption, because in fact what they'd done is preloaded all of the brand new iPhones with a just slightly pre-release version of the soon-to-be-released iOS 18, which when they were then restored from backups with all of your data, had some database corruptions in it. And the only way to fix it was to completely wipe it and set it up fresh, which of course wasn't particularly fun. They brought out an update, 18.01. It didn't fix it. So I had to revert in the end to completely wiping all of my data and spending hours rebuilding my music library, my photo library, and all my apps, all my logins, all my passwords. But that, of course, was fun, so thanks for that, Apple. So pretty much other than that, I have been working and, of course, recording podcasts for you to listen to, or, of course, checking out on YouTube, that will release generally on a Saturday, not at 6:30 in the morning on a Sunday, but when Ricky's editing, who knows?
It's a combination. There are many links in the chain. All it takes is for one to fail, usually me, and then things get delayed. So we record a show. We have to edit up the audio part of it. We have to get Miziel to then grab all the images, all the links, all the videos. That's put in the show notes. That's then sent across to Gav. And he has got, because if we record this on a Wednesday night to get it out for Thursday morning, so we've got the latest releases included in it. So that gives Gav literally 48 hours to crunch through all the stuff, edit it all together, then he sends it back to me for final approval, because it's always good to get somebody to check your work. So there's another couple of hours, and then I have to add in the little bits he forgot or he didn't find, and then we try and get it out for the weekend. But things happen, things get in the way, and sometimes it can be delayed, and then it has to be uploaded and launched whenever it's ready. So sometimes, yeah, it does appear at the wrong time. Apologies for that. We'll refund all the money you spent. One thing to mention there about you and your new phone is I literally last night at 2 a.m. cancelled my order for the new iPhone 16 Pro Max 1TB, because I just felt as if it didn't feel right. There was something not 100% about it. It hadn't been dispatched yet. It was going to arrive before I go to Hong Kong, and I thought, I cannot be bothered trying to do the transfer, because it never works. Even in the past, it never worked properly. You'd always have to put in your codes again. You'd always have to put in all your banking app details, and it is just such a pain in the ass. And is it that much of an upgrade from the 14 Pro Max that I've got just now? Not really. Will this one last me another 6 months? Probably. 90% capacity in the battery still remaining. It still lasts over a day, and the cameras are really good. So I think we'll get Christmas out of the way, we'll get house moving out of the way, we'll make sure everything's tickety-boo, and then once all you guys have done the beta testing of the firmware updates and the hardware, yeah, I might dip my toe back in the water and do a little upgrade myself. But that's what I've been up to. That's what Dave's been up to. But something that you can be up to is going to some events. But instead of me and Dave talking about it, let's rope in a couple of people that can speak on our behalf.
So yes, indeed, we have with us, of course, the inimitable Kathleen McGivney, because it wouldn't be a Red Bar conversation without Kathleen. And we also have a
fashionably late, I shall add in.
Wow, are we going there, Ricky? Okay, we're going there. That's probably going to get you stabbed in the back by Kathleen, but hey, we'll see what happens. We'll see how this pans out. Or we also have with us, of course, Marcus from
Ornix. Hello.
There we go. He caught on eventually. Yes, one of the instigators of what we're going to talk about, which is Red Bar events in the US that tie up with some of the other kind of big set piece events that are going on, that Marcus had an idea, and between him and Kathleen managed to get the ball rolling. How long ago, guys, did this start then?
One of the things I've wanted to do for the last number of years is to visit more chapters of Red Bar. But that's not always feasible from a time or a finance kind of point of view. So the idea was to do kind of a road show in partnership with some brands, so that, you know, we could kind of coordinate with multiple brands to go and visit local chapters. And when we were doing that, when we were talking about it, started talking to Formex about it, and then we brought a few other brands in and decided to do them partially around the schedules of some of the brand representatives being in the country. Several of the brands that are participating in these road shows have people based overseas. We tied it to some of the other events that are happening in the US, because then the people with the brands would already be in the US. So, and I think Marcus could add a little bit to this. Part of it was, you know, Raphael's schedule, and when he was in the US.
And hospital visits.
And that on top too. And I believe, Kathleen, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't it at the Red Bar event in New York when you and Raphael kind of talked about this the first time, and then funnily enough, it is coming back to, is it the same exact event space this year?
It's a different event space, but yeah, it was at that event. And that was a slightly drunken conversation that we had, you know, so bar is half the name, as we know. But yeah, that initial conversation was, I think, last year. I remember it now. The first conversation we had was standing on the street in the rain outside of Windup.
Okay. Where did we go? We had the kickoff kind of roadshow when we were in San Francisco for Windup this year. Mm-hmm. We went to Sacramento Red Bar, Portland, and up to Seattle. And then you guys took it to Canada, right?
We did. We took it to Canada. We went to Montreal and Toronto as well. And then upcoming, we have Washington, D.C., New York, and Philadelphia.
So obviously you mentioned that this started earlier in this year with the first set of road shows. So give us a flavour. What brands were involved then, and have most of those brands transferred over to this new set? So I'm assuming that it worked well for you.
Yeah, I'll take the first part of that question. So the first set of shows that we did on the West Coast was Christopher Ward, Fears, and Formex. And then Brew has attended a couple. Studio Underdog has now joined us. And Haraj will be joining us for one of the legs on this upcoming tour in Philadelphia.
And when we talked about, you know, brands to join that roadshow, I think one of the main criteria was we need to have a good time while on the road, because sometimes we would spend hours in the same car, and you want to spend hours in the same car with people that you're having a good time with. And that was one of the criteria when we talked about which brand, you know, we should bring to places like you know, DC and Philadelphia in this upcoming roadshow.
This sounds like when you watch a wrestling documentary and you've got all the wrestlers on the team bus and they're going between different venues. You want to get on with people. You don't want to get hit in the face with a chair. We don't expect it.
Well, we'll see what happens in Philadelphia. I mean, David's going to be there, so someone, most likely David, will get hit in the face with a chair, I think.
That's okay. I've already prepackaged my full folding chair, so that's in the suitcase, ready to go. No problem. So obviously in a couple of weekends' time, the big wind-up fair, along with Watch Time show in New York, will be happening. And just before and just after that, these events will be happening. So if you can't manage along to one of those big shows and you do want to have, let's say, a more fun night out than maybe the formal shows and get some drinks with the Red Bar crew and get to see a lot of these cool and funky brands, then maybe it is your opportunity. So Kathleen, where can people find out about the details of this?
So if you are a member of Red Bar, Washington, D.C., New York, or Philadelphia, you should already have received a registration link. If you are not a member, we'll be posting on social, on the Red Bar Crew Instagram channel. We'll be posting links for prospective members, for people who are not Red Bar members, to attend. We've been doing this at all of the roadshow events, so that people who maybe, didn't know that Red Bar had a chapter in their town or hadn't had a chance to apply or anything like that can attend the event. They can meet the brands, they can play with the watches, and then potentially join the Red Bar chapter. So we will have that in the links in our Instagram bio at Red Bar Crew on Instagram.
And also, if you're a member of any of the communities of the brands who are actually participating, you're likely receiving a newsletter, or if there's a private Facebook group or anything like this, we're posting that there. So you will hear about those shows and upcoming shows as well. The idea really here is brands are participating at those shows who cherish the collaborative approach, who want to bring their communities together, together with people who might not be interested in that brand, but in another of the participating brands.
And of course, with it being such a big event happening in New York, no doubt there will be people travelling in from all over the world who may well be a member of a Red Bar chapter in Europe, in the UK, or in Asia, and any of these places. So I'm assuming if they reach out to their chapter heads, they can also get a bit of a contact to get themselves into this event as well.
Yeah, that's correct.
Oh,
so
P. Diddy's escaped.
Right. So yes, if you're a Red Bar member from any Red Bar chapter around the world, just ask your chapter head to put you in touch, and we will welcome you to the event in New York as well on the 16th.
Great. Well, that gives us a great summary of what's happening. So if you happen to be in the New York, DC, Philly area over that event space time, please do reach out and come along, see what Red Bar's all about, see what the brands that are exhibiting are all about, and of course, just have a good time, maybe get a few drinks, and you will meet with many like-minded individuals who like to waste hours and hours of their time talking about watches, which of course is why we're all listening to this podcast anyway.
So there you go, some dates for your diary, some cool things afoot across the globe. As much as we're going to Hong Kong, there are things in other necks of the wood. And Halloween's round the corner. We are going to be recording a Halloween special. We've not done this yet because we're now in video format on YouTube. I think we should dress up. And I have lots of different characters I can go as. I can go as Hitman, I can go as Professor X, I can go at, there's tons. Vin Diesel. Dave, who are you going to dress up as?
I think I might go as Joe 90 because he is my alter ego in puppet form. So I think that's possibly who he'll go for. Or I might surprise you all with something different. Stay tuned for what that's going to be.
Yeah, that is in the future, but something that's in the present is a watch that you can pick up if you want to be shocked. And this is, it's not from Casio, it's not a G-Shock, it's actually a Swatch watch. So it's a similar price point, and this is based, I believe, on their Bold series, something that's been around for a while, larger sized, more real estate for you actually to do something creative and artistic. And they have teamed up with The Simpsons.
Well, you say they've teamed up with The Simpsons. Of course they have. But they have been doing Simpsons collaborations since actually 1989 from the very early days. And they've kind of reignited that over the last year or so. In fact, I think, Ricky, you've talked about trying to get your hands on one of the Simpsons watches on one of our journeys to Switzerland.
That was for a Christmas present just at the end of last year where I traipsed around Zurich and various places and different airports trying to get a hold of a watch for Simona. And then when we had Scarlett on the show, that was one of the watches she talked about as being a gift that she got. So yeah, Simpsons watches and swatches. Yeah, they do the damage.
Now, they've not just released one, but they have released 3 new models, 2 watches and one of the wall clocks. Now, these are pretty cool. You've got the Ay Carumbo, obviously that phrase being famous from Bart Simpson, and this is the bold one that Ricky mentioned. And what you have here is you have Bart being electrocuted.
It's not the kind of shocker that Dave's used to, but it still is a shocker nonetheless.
It's definitely not the Star Trek style of shocker. We'll leave it at that. If you're not sure, you know, internet is your friend. Just be careful who's watching your screen when you check that bit out. Anyway, 47mm, so yes, a fairly substantial watch. Just around 12mm thick, 48.8 lug to lug. So it is a chunky piece of plastic on your wrist. Yes, I did say plastic because they can say bioceramic all day long, but it's plastic. It's a quartz watch. It's got 3 bar of water resistance and it comes in at 125 of your British pounds. Cool looking watch. As you know, I love Swatch watches, as do many of you listening to this as well. The other is a more conventional, traditional style Swatch watch as well, and this is based on the Day of the Dead, playing on the words with the Doe of the Dead. I think this is a pretty great looking watch as well. That's one that I may very well pick up, with Bart Simpson's head being a bit like one of those candy skulls. You also have the wall clock that's called the Family. Bright yellow, you've got Homer on the dial and you've got all the other characters on the strap. Huge big piece of artwork for the wall, coming in at around the 450 UK pound mark, which definitely makes a statement in your new house, Ricky, maybe. Maybe that's a housewarming gift for you.
Ooh. Greatly appreciated and accepted. Cool watches. There are a number of really good little Halloween timepieces released in the last few weeks. If we get the chance next week, we might talk about them, or when we get back just beforehand, or we might recap some Halloween watches for a Halloween edition. Timex have got some Day of the Dead, Festival of the Dead stuff that looks pretty cool as well. And obviously Mr. Jones, they do some great things every year. We've talked about them a number of times in the past. And somebody was looking for more information on the watch I was wearing in last week's YouTube show, or news show, because it was a Casio G-Shock, one of the square ones, the 5600 series, and they wanted to know more about it. So quickly, for you and you alone, or anybody else who was interested, this was a Valentine's gift that I got, and it's called the Lovers Collection. This edition came out in 2020, I believe, and it's a paired set. His and hers, or, to be more politically correct, larger sized and smaller sized. So details will be in the show notes there. And the code on that one, I think, is LOV-20B-4JR. And that is pretty much it, Dave. So we've covered quite a lot of stuff. I am absolutely shattered. It's been a hell of a week. Been super busy with stuff, as has Dave. Lots of good content recorded. A couple more things still to go. One more show for me and Dave to record today to get out there while we're away. But yeah, it's well worth listening to, well worth subscribing on YouTube, on your podcast player, and obviously check our website and our Instagram at Scottish Watches on there. So there we go, an end of a show. Thank you for listening, thank you for watching, and we'll catch you again soon.